high-ranking federal official handcuffed at the airport. And the ones who put her there? On their knees, begging. What pushed things this far? And what does it say about power, prejudice, and perception? Let us know in the comments section below. Monique Alderson didn't walk like she was used to being followed. She walked like she expected it. She didn't make herself smaller when she moved through tight spaces. She didn't look for permission to be where she was. And this morning, she wasn't going to start. She rolled her carry-on with her left hand, phone in her right, glancing down at the secured messages coming through a confidential app. Her shoulders were squared, her stride clipped but not hurried. Even in black jeans and a slate-gray trench coat, she looked like someone you didn't want to interrupt unless you had a good reason. 8B17 at Jackson Field Regional Airport was unusually quiet for a Friday, which suited her. She hated chaos. She was flying under the radar for a classified meeting in D.C., in and out, low profile, no escort, just the way she preferred it when work wasn't meant to make headlines. She passed a TSA officer who gave her a once-over that lingered too long, the kind of stare she'd been cataloging since age 9. She said nothing, gave nothing, just walked right through. Behind her, someone said, "Yo, what's she doing back there alone?" Then a pause, a whisper. "You see the way she's walking? I don't like that." 2 men peeled off from the corner near a Dunkin' kiosk. Brent Maddox and Cole Hanley had been on airport patrol all morning, scanning for unusual activity. Maddox, the older of the two, had a sharp jaw and a sharper chip on his shoulder. He wasn't just suspicious by training, he was suspicious by instinct. That morning he had told Hanley, "You can always tell, the way they act when they think the rules don't apply to them." Hanley had nodded, not sure what Maddox meant, not ready to ask. Now Maddox moved with purpose, eyes locked on Monique's back. "Something ain't right about this," he muttered. "Where's her badge? No businesswoman flies alone looking that casual. Not through this airport." "She's probably just..." Hanley started, but Maddox raised a hand. Monique had just passed gate B19 when she heard the footsteps speed up behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am, need to see your ID." She didn't turn around at first, just slid her phone into her coat pocket, took a breath, and slowly faced them. Maddox had already sized her up. Black woman, mid-40, Sesk, calm but too calm, traveled light, alone, not smiling. "Identification," he said again, more forcefully. His eyes narrowed when she met his gaze without flinching. Monique pulled out her wallet and handed over her federal credentials, embossed with the Eagle's seal and her full title. Hanley's brows lifted. He recognized the seal instantly. Maddox, though, didn't even glance at the card before shaking his head. "Fake. Real IDs don't look like this." Hanley looked over his partner's shoulder. "Actually, back off, Cole. I've seen scams before. She's playing a role, trying to walk like she owns the place. Ain't no director of the FBI coming through here on a public flight." Monique's tone didn't waver. "I don't need to explain my travel arrangements to you, Officer Maddox." The name tag caught her eye as she said it. Maddox bristled. "Hands where I can see them." She didn't move. "You're making a mistake." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." People were starting to notice. 2 elderly women at gate B20 stared openly. A man holding a coffee paused mid-sip. Maddox didn't care. He was already reaching for the cuffs. "Turn around. Now." Hanley hesitated. "Maddox, do it." Monique did not resist. She turned slowly. Her coat shifted with her motion, revealing the black service pistol holstered at her side. "She's carrying," Maddox barked. "Uncleared," Monique said, voice calm. "You're escalating a situation you don't understand." "You have the right to remain silent," Maddox barked, yanking her arms back and clapping the cuffs on tight. Gasps echoed from a cluster of travelers. One pulled out their phone. Another whispered, "Is she a threat?" Monique stood tall, face forward, shoulders still squared. No resistance, only silence. Her badge lay on the floor behind them, glinting under fluorescent light. Hanley looked down at it again. His stomach turned. He recognized it now. FBI. Direct. Oh my God, he muttered. But it was too late. The cuffs were on. The phones were recording. The narrative had begun to write itself. And Monique? She didn't beg, didn't plead, just looked over her shoulder at Hanley and said, "You better call Homeland Security, right now." Maddox stood stiff as stone, one hand still gripping Monique's shoulder like he had something to prove. His eyes darted toward the growing crowd, but his voice didn't waver. "Not yet. I need backup at B-19. Possible threat in federal disguise. Female, armed," he said into the radio clipped to his vest, deliberately ignoring the laminated ID card now lying face up near his boot. Monique didn't look at him anymore. Her eyes scanned the terminal, calculating, not panicking, not pleading, just watching, measuring reactions, reading people. Hanley knelt to pick up the badge, his fingers trembling slightly as he brushed his thumb over the golden seal, the embossed eagle, the words surrounding it, United States Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation. He swallowed. "Sir," Hanley started, holding up the ID, "I think you should look at this again." "She printed that at home," Maddox snapped, waving him off. "That's not real." Hanley's voice was quieter, less sure now. But he didn't back off. "It's got the embedded chip and the watermark. It's legit, man." Maddox stepped closer to Hanley, lowering his voice but keeping the anger. "Don't get soft on me now. You saw the look she gave me. She's testing us." Monique let out a slow, deliberate exhale. "I'm not testing you," she said, voice sharp now, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "I'm warning you." Again. The crowd grew thicker, phones up, whispering like wind in tall grass. "She didn't do anything? Why's she in cuffs? Did you hear what she said?" "Homeland?" A man in a business suit moved to the edge of the gathering, tapping on his phone with rapid urgency. Someone else muttered, "Yo, this better not be what it looks like." It was already too late. The video was live. Monique shifted her weight slightly. The cuffs chafed her wrists, but she wasn't struggling. Her gaze moved to Hanley. "Called him." He hesitated, but something in her tone, low, controlled, the kind of authority that doesn't ask, pushed his fingers toward his phone. "Maddox, I really think we need to check this." Before Hanley could finish, a sharp voice rang out from the far side of the terminal. "Officers Maddox and Hanley, stand down immediately." Both men turned in unison. A tall woman in a Navy Ghoul Homeland Security jacket strode toward them, flanked by two plainclothes agents. She held a sleek tablet in one hand and something colder in her eyes. "Hey," Monique said, with a flicker of relief that lasted half a second. "Director Alderson," Lee replied, stopping a foot in front of Maddox. "Release her, now." Maddox's jaw clenched. She presented fake credentials. She's carrying a weapon. She refused to comply." "She didn't refuse anything," Lee cut in, not even blinking. "She complied while you humiliated a federal officer. You are currently in violation of multiple interagency protocols." Hanley's face had gone pale. He didn't speak, just slowly stepped backward. Maddox shook his head, but it was different now. Less conviction, more confusion. "You're telling me she's really who she says she is?" "I'm telling you," Lee said, slowly raising the tablet and showing the screen. "You just handcuffed the director of the FBI, on camera, in front of 50 witnesses, during a national security operation." Maddox looked down at Monique, finally seeing her. Not just her coat or her calm, but the weight behind her silence. He reached for the cuffs, fumbled. "Director, I didn't know." Monique said nothing. She didn't even move her hands, just stared forward as the metal clicked free and the cuffs fell away. Lee stepped in between them. "We're taking it from here." Maddox stood awkwardly off to the side, his badge suddenly feeling heavier than ever before. Hanley didn't look up. Monique rubbed her wrists. The red lines were starting to bloom. She took a slow step toward Maddox, and for a moment he looked like he was preparing to be shouted at, cursed at, maybe hit. She didn't do any of that. She leaned in slightly, her voice a whisper only he could hear. Authority is earned, not assumed. Don't ever forget that. She straightened up, turned to Lee, and nodded. Let's go. The three of them walked toward the security corridor. Lee spoke quietly into her comms, coordinating an immediate transfer and alerting Federal Command. Behind them, Maddox still hadn't moved. His face was locked in place, but his posture betrayed him, shoulders now slack, gaze stuck on the floor. Hanley finally walked over to his partner, voice low, shaken. You realize we put the director of the FBI in handcuffs? On camera. She didn't act like a director, Maddox muttered. No, Hanley said. She acted exactly like one. You just didn't want to see it. The terminal slowly resumed its rhythm. Flights called, passengers buzzed, but something had changed, like the silence after a sudden storm, and from every direction, phones were still out, videos were already trending. In a secure room near the tarmac, Monique sat while Lee handed her a bottle of water. You okay? Lee asked. Monique gave a short nod. This isn't the first time. Won't be the last. Lee sat across from her. We'll issue a full statement. Internal review. Media will want your version. I'll give it, Monique said. But not for vengeance. Lee raised an eyebrow. I want them to know what happened, Monique continued, but more than that. I want people to see how easily they trust the wrong instincts, and how hard it is to change the system from inside. Leaned back. You still think you can? Monique smiled for the first time that day. It wasn't wide, it wasn't soft, but it was steady. I have to. Outside, the chatter in the airport hadn't stopped. Not about the flights, not about delays. About her. About them. And about what it really means when someone looks powerful and still gets treated like they don't belong. The press caught it before the airport PR team could bury it, before legal departments whispered the right words, before some smooth-suited spokesperson could paint over the embarrassment with phrases like misunderstanding or unfortunate protocol breach. It was raw, unedited, streaming live before anyone could stop it. By noon, the footage had been clipped into dozens of TikToks. By 2, it hit the trending tab on every major social platform. And by evening, Monique Alderson's name was on every chyron in America. She hadn't even made it to the classified briefing. The department scrambled. Some tried to handle it internally, others watched from the sidelines, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. But Monique wasn't waiting, she walked right into it. Are you sure you want to go public with this? Agent Lee asked as they stood just outside a modest podium set up, hastily arranged inside a private wing of the airport. There's still time to redirect. We can control the narrative if we act now. Monique stared through the tinted windows at the crowd gathering beyond the velvet rope. Journalists, cameramen, civil rights activists. A few passengers who'd just decided not to board their flights, eyes glued to their phones like everyone else. I'm not interested in controlling the narrative, she said. I'm interested in owning it. She stepped forward. Flashbulbs popped the moment she approached the microphone. She didn't wear a suit, didn't have on the director's pin. She stood there in the same trench coat from earlier, cuffs now undone, sleeves slightly wrinkled. Human. Whole. Undeniable. My name is Monique Alderson, she began, her voice clear and level, and I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A hush spread, like ripples across a lake. Earlier today, I was detained by airport law enforcement officers who refused to acknowledge my credentials, despite my compliance, my identification, and my calm. She didn't raise her voice, didn't scold. I wasn't in uniform. I wasn't escorted, I wasn't expected, and that was enough to make me a suspect. Her hands rested lightly on either side of the podium, wrists still marked red. The cameras zoomed in. I am not here today to demand punishment. I'm not here to turn anger into action. I am here to tell you this isn't new, and it isn't isolated. A reporter raised their hand mid-sentence. Monique nodded at them. Director Alderson, do you believe the officers acted out of racism? She didn't flinch. I believe they acted on bias. Bias that is so deeply ingrained it doesn't need a racial slur to do its damage. Bias that sees black professionalism as a threat, authority as arrogance, confidence as aggression. Silence. Every camera kept rolling. I'm not just a federal agent. I'm not just a director. I am a black woman in America. I walk through spaces with experience you can't Google and pain you can't measure. And if someone with my title, can be treated like a threat with zero provocation, then imagine how often it happens to those without a badge to pull. No one interrupted. No one dared. I'm not asking for outrage. I'm asking for reflection. And I'm asking that we stop pretending training alone is the solution when empathy is what's missing. She took a breath, then said the line that would be replayed for weeks. This country cannot move forward until we stop policing perception and start protecting humanity. The crowd erupted. Outside the terminal, dozens more had gathered, some holding signs, others holding each other. Live streams lit up from every angle, and somewhere in the back, Monique Alderson, Monique's brother, stood watching. He didn't push to the front, didn't call her name, just stood still with a GoPro in hand, recording his sister speak not just for herself, but for all the years they'd spent being mistaken, followed, doubted, and dismissed. Back in the operations room upstairs, Brent Maddox watched too. The department had ordered him off active duty pending review. He hadn't left the airport. He'd just moved to a windowless break room with peeling posters and a coffee machine that always dripped more than it poured. His hands fidgeted with a paper cup. The screen on the wall kept replaying the footage, Monique turning, calmly presenting her ID, then the moment he grabbed her wrist, froze it, cuffed it. The room was empty except for him and a senior officer who hadn't said a word since sitting down. I thought I was following protocol, Maddox said quietly. You weren't. It stopped plenty of people acting suspicious. She walked like she owned the place. The senior officer turned his head slowly. She did own the place, Brent. You just didn't bother to ask what place it was. Maddox clenched his jaw but said nothing. You judged her for walking with confidence. She didn't say she was the director. You didn't give her the chance. The silence thickened. In the conference room where Homeland Security had gathered to debrief, Agent Lee brought Monique a glass of water. Her hands trembled slightly when she took it, her first visible crack all day. Lee spoke softly. That was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. Monique didn't answer right away. Her eyes were still fixed on the screen, replaying the end of her statement, her own voice ringing back at her like an echo from another version of herself. It shouldn't take humiliation to be heard, she said quietly. But if it does, I won't waste it. She looked to Lee then, her expression unreadable, but her voice steady again. I'm going to need full transcripts. Every message, every video, every comment. I want to know what the public's really saying. You want analytics? No, Monique said. I want understanding. Lee nodded. Downstairs, the terminal began returning to motion. Flights resumed, departures called, luggage rolled. But somewhere in the air, tension lingered. Not fear, something heavier, truth, and it wasn't going anywhere. A week passed. The storm didn't die. It didn't even slow. It spread. News anchors shifted from breaking coverage to nightly panels. Hashtags turned into movements. Footage of Monique in handcuffs stood next to her footage at the podium, framed as a contrast of what America was and what it claimed to be. But Monique hadn't disappeared into the flurry. She hadn't gone silent or hidden behind policy. She showed up to every meeting, every follow-up, every press call with the same poised resolve. She didn't want this to be about her alone. She wanted the mirror held wide. On Tuesday morning, the Department of Justice issued a formal statement recognizing a systemic failure in field training protocols and a critical lack of cultural competency. They called it an inflection point. But Monique didn't care about language dressed up to sound like progress. What mattered came 2 hours later, in a closed session held in the Justice Building's East Wing. No press, no podiums, just a room with 3 long tables, a few nameplates, and 2 uncomfortable men sitting side by side. Brent Maddox hadn't shaved. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His uniform was pressed, but it clung to him like it didn't belong. Cole Hanley sat beside him, eyes down, jaw tight, his badge in his lap like it weighed 100 pounds. Monique entered the room alone, no entourage, no blazer, just a blue blouse and a folder tucked under one arm. She walked to the front of the room, stood before them. Maddox didn't meet her eyes right away. Hanley tried, but failed. She didn't speak immediately, just opened the folder and pulled out 2 photographs, both printed in black and white. She held the first one up. "This is me," she said, her voice calm. "Age 11. First time I was stopped by police for fitting a description. I was walking home with a library book." She placed it on the table. "Second photo. This is me at 24. New field agent, Harvard Law graduate, top of my class. A man at a gas station called the police because he didn't believe I had a government-issued credit card." She laid that one beside the first. Then she looked at Maddox. "And last week, that happened again." Finally, Maddox looked up, slowly, like each degree of movement scraped against something inside him. "I didn't see you," he said, his voice low, gravelly. "I saw what I'd been trained to look for, or what I thought I was trained to look for." Monique nodded once, but her face didn't soften. "You didn't just fail to see me, you refused to. And then you escalated, not because I was threatening, but because you were uncomfortable." Maddox swallowed. "I didn't realize. It was like something clicked and I don't know, I reacted." "You reacted like I was less than. Like you had to establish dominance before asking questions. That instinct is why people die. It's why mothers bury sons. It's why black professionals carry their resumes like armor." Hanley finally spoke, his voice cracking. "I should have stopped it." "You could have," Monique said, turning to him, "but you didn't. And silence is never neutral." The room was still, no clocks, no typing, just breath. Then Maddox stood, and to the shock of every eye in that room, he dropped to one knee. Not in a showy way, not performative, just quiet, measured, intentional. "I can't take it back," he said, his voice steadier now, "but I need to live in the discomfort of knowing I was wrong. Because if I don't, nothing changes." Monique looked down at him. She didn't move. Then she nodded. "Get up," she said. "We don't kneel to each other in this building. We face each other." He stood. She reached into her folder again and handed each of them a small, stapled document. "This is what change looks like. It's a new interagency policy already approved. Starting next month, every airport officer in the country is required to undergo identity awareness training, not just racial sensitivity. You're going to help lead it." Maddox blinked. "What?" "You're going to tell your story, not the polished version, the real one, the shame, the mistake, the shift. That's how we get through." Hanley asked quietly. "You trust us to do that?" Monique looked between them. "No, but I trust what it will do to you." The next few days were filled with logistics, meetings, implementation plans, congressional interest. She gave 2 interviews, One for a major network, one for a grassroots podcast run by her brother Malik, who was still stunned she agreed. "You sure you want to come on here with all this unfiltered truth?" he joked in the intro. "That's the only kind of truth that sticks," she replied. They talked for 45 minutes about everything: childhood, microaggressions, leadership, her fear that someday someone would pull her over and not wait long enough for credentials. When it aired, it reached over 2 million views. And it changed the tone, not just online, but inside the department itself. Suddenly, conversations that used to hide behind closed doors were coming out. Officers who had once shrugged at bias were asking questions, not because Monique demanded it, but because her presence made silence feel heavier than words. 2 weeks later, she walked back through Jackson Field Regional Airport, same coat, same gait. A TSA agent paused when she saw her. "Director Alderson?" Monique turned. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said, "for not letting it slide." Monique smiled. "Thank you for saying that." As she walked toward her gate, someone called her name. It was a little girl, maybe 10, standing with her mother. Wide eyes, braids, holding a tiny notebook. "Are you the lady from the video?" Monique knelt down, leveling her gaze with the girl's. "I am." The girl handed her the notebook. "Can you sign this? My teacher said you're the reason we're doing a project on strong black women." Monique took the pen, signed her name. She handed it back, but not before writing one extra line beneath her signature. "Be brave enough to stay visible." As she stood and walked toward her flight, she didn't look over her shoulder. She didn't need to. She had already changed the view.